Hi. How's it going? Well, thank you for coming out tonight. I see you guys have copies of Pharrell's book. I hope you've had a chance to peruse it and look through it. It is a work of art about art and about design and about this amazing, my friend and amazing man.
Well, thank you.
The very first question I'll ask, and maybe it comes to you guys too, is the title, A Fish Who Didn't Know It. A Fish Who Doesn't Know It's Right.
Yeah, a fish doesn't know it's red.
Explain
We
that to me.
debated about that title because a fish doesn't sound like it's grammatically correct, but it's literally the way that you refer to a fish. Doesn't know that it's wet. And that is because I feel like so many of us can be hypocritical. We don't know. And then at the same time, and more importantly, a lot of us are not really self-aware. You know, so like, take that really awful subject called politics. And, you know, someone say, oh, well, you know, I love this person, but if that's who they're supporting, I hate them, I'm not gonna talk to them again, da 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 da. And it's like, even if you really feel deep down inside that you're fundamentally right about all the issues that you're referring to, when there is a divide, there's a divide. And it takes, you know, I was just saying this the other day, you know, it takes two sides in order for there to be a tug of war, you know?
Yes.
And people will not realize that they can sometimes be just as nasty as the other people, or as other people on the other side, as perpetrators, like the people who they feel like are perpetrating. You know, you can end up stooping down just as low. And the point is to wake yourself up and let you, or to help you realize that like you're essentially doing the same thing. You know, you can get pushed to that point.
Yes.
And you know, a fish would argue with you. Fish would argue with you that there's such thing called water. They'd be like, well, what are you talking about? Until they either die and, you know, float to the surface, or they get fished for whatever reason. But it's only until then. And that is how self-awareness, that's how, you know, incredibly perplexed the concept of self-awareness is. You know, if you think about equality in this country, you know, and we say, okay, you know, as men, we say we really want equality for women. Like, that's the pay gap alone, but we'll just put that to the side for a second. There are things that we say all the time that we think are okay. And that's not really equality. It's just something that you're just used to because you have a privilege as a man. You know, you are able to say certain things, and that's the point in, wow, yeah.
We were talking.
It's this division, but that's the thing. We're really prepared when people. Do you like it when people point your shit out?
Nobody likes
it.
that.
It is the quickest conversation. Oh yeah, really? Oh, okay. Yeah. Did you say you wanted to go over here and go? You know, they get off that quick.
Yes.
You know, because we don't really want to hear
our shit.
Right. And it's interesting because you talked about having a good side, but that's essentially it. That's the issue with us. We do have another side, and in fact, you've seen it in the mirror. Whenever there's another mirror around, when there's more than one mirror, you see that other side, and you're like, whoa, you know, because that's that side that you don't really refer to as your good side, right? See, you're willing to
Having a night for you.
But then, for a whole bunch of people that say that they don't take selfies, if you look on their Instagram, or if they have it or whatever, and you look at their photos, they're taking angles of the same picture and they're calling it a selfie, and they're saying, oh, I'm taking a different picture. No, you have a different outfit on in a different room, but you are taking the same Mona Lisa every time.
That's so interesting.
You know what I mean? Because you don't like the other side. Because you have a preferred good side. And what you don't realize is that so much of your life, you are ignoring that other side of your face that God made, that none of your friends complain about or your friends do. It's just in your mind. You just choosing not to see this. And whenever there's two mirrors and you get caught off guard, you're like, whoa! Because you are seeing something that your mind keeps trying to like omit.
Yes.
And that is us.
I agree.
That is us.
It's interesting, we're talking about women a minority, they're 50% of the population. How is that a minority? Like, it's counterintuitive to the definition, but we have, that's that selfie perspective that we've given ourselves.
Yeah.
And we buy into the word, and we buy into it. So the interesting thing in the book, is a lot of P's, his journey and the eclectic nature of like his design sense and the people that he's met. One of the things that I am, in being blessed enough to call him my friend and a partner and someone that as a mentor and someone I talk to, but he looks like he's 15. Like every time I'm sitting, I go to my wife, I'm like, I need a facelift. This is all fucking Pharrell. It's like, he's running backwards. But the thing that I get, and you will, in talking to him and saying it is not a stress-free, because everyone has stress, but he approaches things in a much more sort of, he lets things roll off. And he's passionate.
Oh man, you have no idea.
He's passionate about what he's
My
passionate
team is listening to this going, yeah, right. We wish. That's so mean. Oh man, no way.
What he presents to me, and I think this is a good thing, is I called Pharrell very early into our, dealings at a really crucial point in my life when I left ABC and was thinking about going to Netflix and there were other things. And I talked to him because he was one of the only people that I felt like, in terms of the space and the experiences he had that could relate, because it was very nascent and new for me. And a lot of people would be afraid to have that conversation because it affected my life in such a big way that they wouldn't want to really. He was not afraid to sort of give his opinion. And what his opinion was based upon was passion and truth. And it was very philosophical, but it was also very much so something that I took with me and it stuck to my guts. It came from, he reads a lot. He also understands, and he's always been ahead of the curve in terms of what, where we're going. And it basically came down to us controlling our own path and us controlling our own journey. And as you look at the book, the one thing that I feel like is at every point, I chose Pharrell, there's him, there's Swiss Beats and those things. In hip hop, as we want to call it, whatever, there are people who started changing the conversation. Pharrell, in terms of art and design, has always been ahead of the curve. And I think that I'm interested to know, and I would want to know, like, at what point did that part of you that says, I want to sort of have control and some ownership of my direction, and some sort of, I wanted to be, not to just be different to be different sake, but I wanted to be me. At what point did you know, because I know that at the early stages you had to leave a lot of money on the table to do that. At what point did you feel like that was who you were going to be?
I never knew who I was gonna be. I still don't know who I am.
Yeah.
I was joking and I was dead ass serious. But when those things were happening, I think I just had the right people come into my life at that time, and just kind of like say, hey, you know, you do all these things for so many people. When are you ever gonna do something for yourself? And I was like, yeah, but you know, because in my mind, when I'm a producer, so I'm purely thinking about other people and how we can enhance or, you know, lift, you know, help somebody to lift themselves. And I didn't realize that about myself. I just thought, oh yeah, I like making music and all these awesome opportunities allowing me to be creative. And I never really seen it as like a purpose. But once I saw it as a purpose, then what you don't want to do is have a purpose, but then you're not really thinking about what your purpose is as it pertains to the chessboard itself. It's one thing to realize what kind of piece you are. It's another thing to realize where you belong. So, you know, the right people around me were just like, hey, you have to like, you gotta do more than figure out who you are and what you do. You have to figure out where you belong. And that's where that started just like, that just painted a whole different picture for me.
When you talk about the right people around you, I've been, you know, fortunate enough. Peter Saji is my partner. We're doing a Broadway play with that we're talking about later, with, you know, but he allowed us into his creative process. And you know, there's a family around him. There's people around him, and you have people around you. When you do the work, especially the level that you're doing at, I was very interested in the notion that you queried the room. And people had different thoughts, and you allowed those thoughts. Like, how important is it to have people around you who you feel disagree?
Yeah, you need some no's. No's make your yeses sharper, or they completely extinguish your delusions. Either way, it's healthy for you. Yeah. And I'm an Aries, so you know I'm a fighter for what I really believe in. But man, no is so good and so powerful, and I'm not gonna be all philosophical, but it's like there's so much power and beauty in the word no.
It is.
Yeah.
It is. It's the most powerful word.
Yeah.
Honestly, in terms of creativity.
Yeah.
Because you don't have to take that no, but you know that it's there.
Yeah.
And you know, I look at, you know, the shorts at the Oscars, you know, and
the shorts while it's cold tonight. I know, man. I know, man. I know. I just know that like I'm like a creature of habit, and I'm kind of like, you know, I'm like kind of just look at my instincts, and I leave it at that, and then people point things out to me. Hey, you know, you kind of like wearing the same thing. You know? yeah, I know. I don't know.
when did that start?
It's just, and then you get, and you know, you're here, and like, let me take my glasses. I'm sorry. So I'm here, and then, no, I've been in the studio for like kajillion, forever, million, kajillion years, and trust me, I need them. But then you just, you know, you get in scenarios like this where you're in front of like a lot of people, and then like these subjects come up, and you're like, yeah, that's really true. Like, yeah. It's like these conversations are like when people are like pointing your shit out. You gotta just be cool with it. Like, yeah, it's true.
Do you care? But do you? The naysayers, the idea when you live a public life, and creativity is private that you present publicly. How does it affect sort of your the next steps that you take, and just the way that you sort of live your everyday sort of life.
Naysayers?
Or just the idea that
In
people
terms
are
of
gonna have
versus-
an opinion.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, everyone's
They
gonna have
don't
an
know you.
opinion. They're gonna have an opinion. But I think what happens is when you're like super passionate about something that you see, like when you're really connected to something that you feel is very real to you, there's a compulsion. And to me, I think that compulsion or drive is something that is largely taken for granted. You know, when they say, oh, these people are lazy, or they don't want this, or they don't want that, I feel like drive is an important component to it all, you know? Like, I'm trying to make, a little bit more than persistence, because I feel like you can be persistent, but you may not have the talent. There are a lot of people who are really talented, and you'll hear people say things like, man, I just don't understand it. If I had this talent, if I could do this, or if I could draw like that, if I could paint like that, I'd be doing it every day. But you don't realize it takes more than just talent. It takes drive.
Totally.
And not everybody has that. And so when you love what it is that you do, and you also have that drive, yeah, the odds are going to be a little bit different for you. You know?
Yeah. He said burning desire. I did think it's a desire. I think it also, like, you know, I said I would love to meet your mom and dad and just share what your foundation was. How much do you think your foundation, things that were instilled upon you, translated to your success and who you are and continue to be in terms of, you know, an iconic sort of trendsetter, you know what I'm saying, and just not even a trendsetter, just a beacon for people in terms of creativity.
Well, okay. Well, there's you know, in all like creative people, there's like a tad bit of like delusion. You kind of gotta believe it a little bit in order to stick with it. And then in terms of like, you know, my formative years, I'm the sum of like all of those variables in my environment. You know, my parents, my grandparents, like the neighborhoods, the people, the economy, the community, the drugs that were going on in that time, the music that was happening, pop culture. Like I'm the sum of all those things.
And yeah, you came up Virginia.
Yeah.
Which, you know, I think when people hear it, it's a lot. The image is not what you may think it is.
Right.
I'm saying?
Right.
And you were right there in the middle of it, you know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
In terms of, I don't know if people know this, but Rum Shaker.
Hey, I know that.
How were you, 16, 17?
No, I was a little late.
Okay, a kid, you know what I'm saying? And the
I think 17, 18, I'm not sure, something like that.
I mean, that's how far it goes back. And being in an environment where we didn't know if this was gonna continue and get to where it got. You know what I'm saying? Nobody really thought you were living for the moment, for the day, for the next check. You know what I'm saying? A quick check. The notion of when things started changing, there was when doing my research for this, there was a time in the 90s where the Neptunes were responsible for 70% of the top 25 songs in the world. There had some touch. You understand, like Jeff Bezos. Amazon was responsible for 7 out of every 10 internet transactions Amazon touches. There was a time when people didn't know this, that you were responsible top 25 songs in popular music. You had some part to do with it. Like, did you realize it? Did you understand what it meant? You know what I'm saying? Like,
No. I knew what the only thing that my system could handle in terms of information was that we were just enjoying it. and having so much fun. And that's really all my system could handle. I didn't have
We're in the moment.
the capacity to take on anything more than that. It was,
Yes, authenticity.
Sorry?
It was.
How good that noise track was like in your life? That noise track.
It was the nori, I mean, it was
Game
so
changer.
much, honestly, it was so much, everything. You know, and the idea of, you know, we talk about people around us.
Yeah.
And where we're at, and I'm saying, your amazing wife and your family as we transition and you continue to grow. How does that affect where you are now compared to where you were 15 years ago, compared to where you're gonna go in terms of how you're looking at, you know, the next chapter or the next day? How's that sort of part of your life?
I think family is more like it's a refresh button. It's life period.
Because they don't care. They care about, but they don't care win or loss. You're still dad, you're still my man, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah. But I mean, in terms of like the energy source, it's
Yes.
just kind of like a different kind of solar power. You know,
Yes.
it's different. You're doing things for complete different reasons. You know, before it used to be because I couldn't wait until my peers, you know, saw that thing get like, you know, put in reverse out of the 18-wheeler or like,
Yeah.
you know, or like some sort of debut online or like some chain or something. Like that's literally where my mind was, because that's where my peers were. That's what we thought about. We just thought about like just stunting all the time. And then you just, you know, then life really happens in a real way. You start having some real losses. You know, family members, you know, transitions, if you will. Like those things like really happen. And so when you lose life, you've been given things that you never thought you would ever see ever in your life. Because from Virginia, thinking about Hollywood was just literally something that like you perceive through the television or through like film or like radio or whatever. But having the things that we had just puts you in a place where it's like, okay, whoa, I never felt this height before. And then when you lose people who are like integral, you know, the real true scaffolding to like the real true like fibers of your personality, when you lose some of those people, those are real holes. Those are real holes that never get filled. And there's no college course in figuring out how to have everything, seemingly everything in the world. Nothing really. But seemingly everything on a superficial level. And having some real fucking holes. Real holes pop up in the middle of all that shit. And, excuse my French or my English. And then there's nobody to really be able to like walk you through it.
When was the first time that you felt like, if you mind, when was the first time you felt like you remember that?
My grandmother.
Yeah.
Absolutely. That like, my first grandmother, I lost her at 15. I lost my other one like at 30 something. And those are two holes in my perception that I don't let things flow too closely to those holes or they'll fall. Like those are real. Because my grandmothers were powerful and had like incredibly all-seeing abilities, you know. So to lose that was like tough. Going back to what you asked me about, which was like family, when you're in a position to make life, there's a whole different respect for life in general.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean? Because you lose it, then you know what loss really feels like. And when you make it, you'll do anything to protect that.
I love that. And so, getting all this, and I'm going to do a little bit of the backstory. At a certain point, there was a God given gift. There was talent. The success came, and you could have continued the path. But like you started to grow, as we all do. That's the purpose of life. And design, and that falls under fashion, art. When did that become? When did you feel like that became, because it's such a part of who you are now, when do you think that became part of your life, or started the part of your life that it is today?
So there are a lot of designers that are getting a lot of like acclaim, and they deserve it these days. I don't look at myself as one of those people. I'm honestly, I'm not doing anything different than most of these people in the audience are doing. If they were given the opportunity, the access, the resources to go in and like design things, a lot of them, not all of them, but a lot of them probably would. You know, like your kicks, like, well, I want a purple here, I want a yellow here. Who wouldn't do that? We just need the access. They weren't letting us in before. So now that I have this access, it looks like, oh, he's Mr. Designer. No, what he is just super appreciative, and I intend on like not ever letting anything breathe.
Not letting off.
Yeah.
Not letting off the pedal.
Yeah, no, I don't.
And like, like BBC and just like things like you start, the things that are now commonplace in terms of the next, that was, like I said, a lot of things come to refer, but that was, you were early, a pioneer in that, like.
Again, given an opportunity, just given an opportunity and told it was possible. And once I saw that, I was like, oh yeah. And then I started like writing songs like that, like you can do it too.
Yeah.
Some people listened.
And my mom.
Yeah, push was on.
So, Pharrell and I, our current place we're at started because I do a show called Blackish, and Pharrell was one of Pharrell, through a friend of our mutual friend of ours, Astrid and Sam Johnson, was someone that I was like, oh my God, if I ever could get a chance. So we did a show called an episode about Juneteenth, and Juneteenth is June 19th, 1865, and it was the last quote unquote official government sanctioned day of slavery. There was a lot of things that happened with it. It didn't obviously really happen because we see where we're at today, but we did a musical episode of it, and Pharrell and I wanted to work with Pharrell, and timing probably couldn't, but we came back and we wanted to do a play, and the pitch, to Pharrell, I was like, if I could get, this is not gonna happen, it was, and he took it so much further. The notion that I love hot dogs and fireworks the same as everyone else, we both do, but the notion that we have an Independence Day in this country that is not reflective of everyone's independence.
Yeah.
And it's not reflective of the independence of the people who had on the backs, blood, sweat, and tears that helped build this country, is part of that sort of cognitive dissonance that I feel like exists in this country today that you and I both want to be a part of. And one of the things that Pharrell's done, when I say that so many things become, there's a concept called the Bader-Meinhof concept where you'll say, I want to see I've never seen a red Tesla, someone will bring it up, and then you can't stop seeing red Teslas. And that's an actual psychological thing. We want to bring forth the notion that we are a part, all of us, not just black, but all of us are a part of what this country is. Slavery is the recessive gene of this country. And for someone who has so much going on, and so much, when I spoke to you, you were immediately responsive, immediately my partner, immediately pushing me. Like, what does saying things and being a part of the bigger structure, because you're a huge philanthropist, you're a huge humanitarian, what does saying that mean in your career, your personal journey?
It's just a personal responsibility to my children and to the future decision makers, There has to be equality for women. And it's gonna take more than just supportive men, but it's gonna take women. It's gonna take women looking each other in the eye, holding each other by the hands, and just recognizing their real, true, natural power. Which is, and I say this often, but you guys have the ability to hold hands and say, you know what? We don't like the way the species is going, we're done. You can do that. You know, and for me, it's really hard to achieve, it's not possible to truly achieve equality in a matrix that was written by and for a double standard.
Yeah.
That's just not possible. So, but I am a perpetual optimist, and I will say what I do love I love a lot of things about our country. But the most is that, well, these two things. One is the progression. There's been a lot of progression in the 400 years. And we appreciate that, but that's not enough. And that's why the other aspect to me that makes me like excited about our country is the potential. I just feel like that old spirit is dying. A lot of those guys are like, they old, they dying out. And I feel like, the future decision makers, we have to provide them with as much information as possible. So when given this opportunity to do this, it's like, yeah, of course, we have to. And it's not fun. It's not fun when you point these things out. Well, somebody will say, well, you know what? What about moving things forward? And it's like, yeah, we can move them forward, but you need to understand where you're moving forward in. Like our country, the fate of our last presidential election boiled down to the Electoral College, which was based on the idea of making sure the slaveholding states had enough headcount to like even compete for that election at that time. So, black people at the time were African Americans. We were considered 3/5 human. That is still what the Electoral College is founded on, and that is still, it still holds more weight than the popular vote. So how can there be equality in that matrix? So if we say, okay, well, there is equality. Barack Obama was the president. Okay, he was, and women were still not being paid the same as men.
All right, that's right, Pharrell.
And they still are not being paid the same as men
Pharrell.
right now.
Yeah,
You know what I'm saying? That's not, how can there be equality?
that part.
When we keep using like a Second Amendment, something that was meant to keep, the tyranny that they were referring to like Britain, not black people, but they actually did in the national anthem, and it's called the third verse. You gotta read it.
Yeah.
In our national anthem
You
right
don't
now.
know the third verse.
And my thing is like, as long as, the distractions continue to happen and we're just like caught up on our phones, which I love my phone, I live on my phone, just like you, but we are just like, there's just mass distraction. When they wanted to change the narrative to the Kavanaugh conversation, they brought our brother up there for 6 minutes, and then our brother, Mr. West. They brought him to the White House, and then you know what? No one was talking about the Dr. Ford Kavanaugh conversation. It just didn't even have the heat anymore. And I'm saying this is what continues to happen to us over and over and over and over again. And because we get a couple of wins here, we got the House, we start getting excited. Yeah, we got the House. Women are still not being paid the same as men. You know what I'm saying? Like, there's still like African Americans that are just being like gunned down. Or how about this? Are we still just like having our schools shot the fuck up? Like, how can there be equality when at Sandy Hook there were no black kids that got killed there, and they still did not want to have a gun conversation? So how can there be equality? That is what I mean when I say a fish doesn't know that it's wet.
Right. Right.
Because as we smile and we're excited about all these things, we have no idea that we are in this matrix that is warped the fuck.
Right.
It's crazy. And all of us are guilty
Yeah, we are.
because you have your opinions and you can't say that you haven't stooped so low that you said something that you regret or you've not done something that you regret. But then when a celebrity does it, you want to nail them to the fucking cross.
Right.
Like, this is all of us, you guys. Like, all of us. Nobody is perfect. Like, when you think about what Kanye, you know, people have their opinions about him. I don't agree with shit he's been saying recently. But I love him and he's my brother.
Exactly.
You know? So there are people going, oh, you know, fuck him, blah, 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 fuck his shoes, okay, that's the way you feel. But what about when when you've done some things that people don't agree with, or you've said some things that people don't agree with? You know what I'm saying?
You started this conversation.
You guys, they say, oh, immigration. Okay, how come y'all never get mad at the employers that are paying people, that are paying the immigrants that are taking your jobs? Or, okay, they're gonna come here, they're gonna rape our children. Oh yeah? So we're not gonna talk about the Catholic Church? Okay. Right? So we're not gonna have these conversations. This is what I'm saying. And by the way, it's all of us.
Yes.
It's all of us. You do a bunch of shit that you criticize everybody else for in the comfort of your home. But it's what the question is, what are we gonna do? That's why I tried in the book. I just wanted to point those things out, and I think the answer to that is by people finding the best parts of their personality, that other side that you don't like of your face that you never use in your selfie, the other side of your personality, to find the beauty in that, to find that there's a gift in there somewhere, and somewhere in there you could do something for other people. Somewhere.
We talked about backstage, and I was saying, you know, in recent, there is the ex-chief creative officer of Hallmark, wrote a great book, but he said something interesting. He said every year he would go speak to kids. That was, you know, and young kids. And in preschool, he'd ask the kids the same question. He'd say, how many of you guys are artists? In preschool, everybody raises their hand. First graders, how many of you guys are artists? 75% of the kids raise their hand. Second grade, how many are artists? 30%. By third, fourth grade, you might find a kid or two. And it's very interesting. I told Pharrell, I was like, why is that? Why is it that when we're young and pure, we know that we're all artists? You know what I'm saying? Not that we can draw this, but we know that we want to create.
On some level.
On some level. The purpose of art is to do something that makes the world better. An expression of who you are. But something about us, as we grow older, we start not seeing that part of ourselves. And that is sad. And that's the part of us that, like, we need to change and challenge our kids